Short, sweet, and painless.
Sounds like me. Short,
sweet, painless.
Thank you.
So I was at your offices yesterday.
Yes.
The opening of the incredible new offices here. People of power and prestige walking all over in every cubicle in every corridor. Johnny Infantino was walking. I got a couple minutes with him, and I was talking about people in positions of power and how they view the position before they get it and how they view it when they get it. So you've been on this job now for a few years. You saw it from the outside, and then you took it over. What has surprised you about the role and the job and the responsibility of leading CONCACAF as the president?
It's not so much surprises. It's, when I sort of, even before I took the position, or when I was, I guess, seeking the position, I always had a philosophy which hasn't changed, quite honestly, which was really, and I think to me, it's a generational change that's happening in football, especially at our level. Is that leadership is about service. It's not about power, quite frankly. And I think one of the things I've noticed that in the job in 28 months or 29 months is that there's a lot of people in football like that. And I spoke last night of my 41 presidents, and the amount of work that they put in, day in and day out, for football. Some on a volunteer basis, some for not, they don't necessarily get paid. But what they do for football in their own federations or at their own clubs or whatever is amazing. And I know that sometimes, especially in the last few years, the industry has taken a bit of a hit from a branding standpoint, starting obviously at the FIFA level. But the reality is there's a lot of good people in football. And that wasn't so much a surprise. It was more an affirmation of what I probably thought it was. But until you kind of get into the belly of the dragon, you don't really know that. So it was more of an affirmation than any surprises.
Were there challenges that you didn't anticipate or that were greater than you anticipated?
Yeah, there were challenges. I think a lot of the challenges were, removing a lot of the scar tissue that was there. And the reality is trying to convince some of your partners that are not football partners, but you have to still do business with, financial institutions and those kind of entities to kind of do business with them. I mean, we literally, when we took over CONCACAF 28 months ago, my senior staff and myself were faced with a task of doing business with banks, as small of a little thing like that, because of what had happened. So a lot of it wasn't convincing ourselves, was convincing others. And I think the only way to do that was really to do it on a day-by-day basis. And now, in 28 months, it's completely turned around in terms of how we do business, how we're looked upon, the branding, our governance, our transparency. Now it's kind of spilling over into the football as well.
Can you just elaborate a little bit in specifics and details? When you say doing business with banks, it's that business wasn't done before?
No, what happened was,
or was it done in a way that needed to be done?
Well, no. What was happening was because of what had happened 3 years ago in the world of football, that a lot of institutions that were scared to do business with you, literally, and so you have to regain the trust of these institutions. And I just use banks as an example, but a lot of these, whether it's governments, so you have to regain the trust of them so that you could continue doing business with them, and we've done that. And so, but that took it on so it wasn't so much an internal fight; it was more the internal-external exchange that we really needed to rebuild that confidence with the external shareholders, really, of the game, so that we can continue doing what we do, which is putting football first.
Programming note, Victor will be available for a mixed zone after this talk, so you can ask him other questions and take pictures and ask him questions that maybe I didn't. Can you elaborate a little bit more, because you mentioned the world of football, the way that soccer, the way FIFA, the way CONCACAF has been viewed, is viewed, coming in when you talk about governance and compliance, and more importantly, transparency, which was a word that I heard a lot, even last night in the offices. How does that manifest in what you're going about doing for CONCACAF and providing that transparency so that everybody has that trust in what you and what CONCACAF are doing?
Yeah, I mean, it starts in all facets of what we do, whether it's how do we report to our shareholders on the governance side, on the financial side? How do we sort of roll out our programs, the communication piece on that? And really, to be honest with you, one of the key things I thought as an organization that we needed to show was to build in a lot of empathy in terms of how we do business on the one-on-ones, whether it's our staff with our membership, whether it's myself with our stakeholders. So I think those are the kind of ingredients that we've put into the soup that has really transformed our organization in all levels. And I think so it's not one thing, it's really a series of things. And I think last night, as you said, thank you for coming to the office last night, that sort of was a culmination of this work. Now obviously it's still, for me, it's the beginning, and it's an organic process, and it's not something that has an end, quite frankly. It's something, this is the way we need to continue doing business.
The next panel is going to talk more about the club championships and that, but we're going to focus here when it comes to on-field and the competition that's going on a couple of things. Number one, Nations League, and number two, Gold Cup. So I think we have a video when it comes to Nations League. They told me that, so if we have it now, we should probably put that up. I'm going to give it a couple seconds, and if it doesn't come up, then I'm going to continue on.
CONCACAF Nations League is one of the best things that can happen for us in the Caribbean. It gives all the members an opportunity to play against top competition.
We want to show a lot of those big guns that we have what is the CONCACAF League will give us this opportunity.
Amor por futebol.
The best way to develop is to play football on a higher level. Futebol, para mim, não se estima futebol.
Young players will benefit from this kind of competition. The world will get a chance to see them and certainly hone their skills.
CONCACAF ha ido dando pasos muy positivos en cuanto a la parte esta competitiva y de desarrollo. Nos ayuda a mantener una escalera gradual de desarrollo desde la categoría sub-15 hasta nuestra selección mayor.
On repart aussi dans cette compétition avec une très jeune équipe, une nouvelle équipe, que cette compétition y ait le beau jeu et vive le jeu que veut le président Montagliani.
Participer à la Ligue des Nations pour nous, c'est quelque chose de très important, puisque c'est une nouvelle compétition sur la CONCACAF.
The Nations League per se is a very competitive tournament.
Donc du coup, pour moi, pour participer à une grande compétition comme ça, c'est toujours un bonheur, puisque voilà, je suis un joueur très jeune.
That is good for football, it's good for the game, and good for the player also.
Okay, so I guess the question would be, rather than just saying it's good, why is it good? Why was this done? Why do you think this is going to be successful?
Well, first and foremost, what had happened in CONCACAF was really a little bit of a vicious cycle. You had too many of our countries that would, in a 4-year span, would play single-digit games. And I'm not just talking about small nations. I'm talking even mid-sized nations. It was very difficult for a lot of our nations to get friendlies. Maybe only some of our bigger nations would easy getting their friendlies. And then we also did analysis of those friendlies. And some of them are fine, especially when you're playing some of the bigger competitions in Europe. But a lot of those friendlies were really meaningless. And so what we decided to do is that our Nations League was really on the concept of creating more competition, creating more opportunities, and so in having a base where everybody has at least an opportunity to play a minimum of about 24 games in a 4-year period. And really, at the end of the day, it's a very simple formula. I mean, the high tide raises all boats. Also, we were creative in that the league is creative enough where some of our bigger nations have still the opportunity to play the big time friendlies that they want to play. So we've incorporated that too. So next year, as you see with the scheduling, for instance, U.S. plays England coming up. You still have an opportunity to have those because of the way we've scheduled and put the groups together. So it kind of ticks all boxes. But if you see by the reaction, I mean, I was in Montserrat to watch Montserrat, our smallest member in FIFA 5,000, win. They beat Belize 1-0, and it was an unbelievable. I mean, I've been in some big matches in my life, and it was right up there with World Cup finals, with Champions League. It was incredible watching an entire nation, literally almost at the game, watch them win 1-0. And so, to me, that's all about football. And I think, to be honest with you, one of the principles I think that needs to come back to football, I think we've kind of lost our head a little bit with all this economic principles, and you see honestly, a lot of football has become pretty sterile, and I think we got to bring the human principle back a little bit. And I think this Nations League, it actually tastes like football, smells like football, and to me, I'm really proud of the way CONCACAF has embraced it and its members have embraced it. And I think, given time, obviously, to cycle, you're going to see a lot of countries, including our two biggest ones, improve as well, because they'll get their competitive matches that I think they need as well.
When you say sterile, it's because of the lack of competition in each and every game, or just
I mean, not to take shots at other confederations.
Go ahead, do it. We do have another. Oh, there we go. There we go. We're back.
Okay.
You're back.
Sorry.
Your shot. You were taking a shot at somebody.
Yeah, no, not at somebody. Just that overall, you see the sterility of some games. I mean, with all due respect, you turn on the weekend and you watch all these league games, and sometimes, a lot of them are not great. And the reality is everything's perfect. The pitch is great, and stadiums are great, and that's all good. But some of the romanticism, I think, needs to come back to football, and some of that, I think, has to come because decisions have to be made not just based on economics. It has to be based on football and the growth of football. And I think our Nations League is a perfect example of that because it really gives everybody an opportunity. It doesn't matter the size you are, what your budget is, how many players you have. If your players are pro, amateur, semi-pro, everybody has that opportunity to play. And I think, to me, that's very, very important.
Victor the Romantic. Okay, let's move on to Gold Cup. We have another video talking about the Gold Cup, and we'll ask you a question here when that's done. So. All right, so Gold Cup, something that is near and dear to me and to us over at Fox, being broadcasters of it, having played in it, having watched it, loving it. But it is an opportunity for you and for CONCACAF. So can you talk a little bit about how you see it going forward and the things that you are doing to change it, to make it better, whether it's to get rid of some of the sterile nature that you were talking about, or anything else on or off the field with regards to Gold Cup?
No, listen, it's our flagship event, obviously, it's had some unbelievable stories, some of them that you were personally involved with, and as you can see, there's more and more. You see some upsets happening. I mean, Jamaica's been in the last two finals, deservingly so. For the first time, we are actually having. We just announced the first venue for next year's Gold Cup outside of the U.S. in Central America. And we're going to announce a Caribbean venue before the end of the year. And so we're also bringing the event outside our usual location. We know that the U.S. has been a fantastic host, and obviously the majority of it is still obviously going to be in the U.S. for obvious reasons. But for us, it's also we're expanding the field from 12 to 16 because I think our Nation League will support that. We saw some results even in the last Gold Cup with the two debutantes that were very competitive. Curacao, who was a debutante, just losing narrowly to Mexico and giving them a good game. And so I think the ingredients are there for the expansion and also trying to build some capacities outside North America. And I think that's one of our goals. And the truth is that the Gold Cup is a great venue to have those discussions with, whether it be a government or whether it be even the private sector in the Caribbean or in Central America, to say, listen, when we're bringing this to you, it's an opportunity for you to invest in your infrastructure. And it's an easier discussion to have when you do it with your flagship event, rather than just saying, I'm bringing the U15 tournament here. It's a pretty difficult ask for a government to start investing for that. But I think if you use, like FIFA has used the World Cup as their flagship to invest in countries, I think we can use the Gold Cup in a very strategic way to start investing in infrastructure or having people invest in infrastructure, both in the Caribbean and Central America, so that we start building the capacities of the Confederation.
Two more quick questions. One, you are responsible for soccer players and for soccer in the region, not men's soccer players or women's soccer players, all soccer players out there. So when it comes to the women's game, what are you doing, what is CONCACAF doing to continue to pour more resources and make that more popular as we go forward, so that there are players and there are opportunities going forward for teams and players and your member nations?
Yeah, listen, I think one of the key things is that anytime you lead an organization, or as leaders within an organization, that we have to remember that every time you make a decision, regardless of what facet of the organization, that it has to you always have to keep in mind that the central figure of football is the player. Okay? People come and watch the player. They don't come and watch, with all due respect, the referee. They don't come and watch executives up in the eating shrimp salad up in the suites, or come watch you as a broadcaster. I'm sorry, Lex. Sure. But they come watch the player. So every decision we make has to be, we have to ensure that it's the right decision for the player. As it relates to women's football, we just hired Karina LeBlanc, former international player, originally from Dominica, obviously Canadian, as a fellow Canadian like myself. And so she's going to be tasked with leading that charge, but it can't be on one person. And we saw with the great story that Jamaica just qualified for the first Caribbean nation to qualify for the Women's World Cup. You know, those are great stories, but we have to capitalize on those great stories. Alan Rothenberg, and by the way, congratulations, Alan, well deserved, a legend, and sometimes we overuse that word, but I think with him it's underused. And we saw the work that was done for the '99 World Cup and what that did. And I think having Jamaica go to the World Cup, having Karina on board, and really galvanizing sort of that energy to promote not women's football, not just at the top level, but also especially at the grassroots level. And we really, have to break the culture barrier in some of the areas in the world, and even within CONCACAF, where we just have to, the more you have, the more opportunities you have. And, we had a saying in Canada, which is so true. We had the iconic Christine Sinclair, and we used to say, you always used to say, more Christine, more often, which means we want more of them. But to get more of them, you need more people playing. And so to us, it's a basic formula, and I think we're really happy Karina's on board to lead that charge.
Last question. We've already talked a little bit about the wonderful opportunity in 2026 with, from our perspective, our friends and partners to the north and to the south. From a CONCACAF perspective, how can you use that to be the runway that we've talked about to help the region, to help the teams, to help the players, and to help the sport?
Yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity. I think first, obviously, it was an honor being, teammates with Carlos and Yon de Luisa, who's here, Decio de Maria as well from Mexico, and obviously my Canadian brothers up north. And this journey started 7 years ago with just thinking about having a joint bid, and so it was a real honor to be part of that journey. And obviously, when you win, is always better. But for CONCACAF, I think it's a tremendous opportunity because, and as Carlos alluded to earlier, yes, the hosts are the three countries, but really it's a CONCACAF World Cup in the sense that that's where the opportunity lies. It's not just because the players that will be playing in it obviously will come from all over our region. It's an 8-year runway, so it's not just the 32 days in 2026. It's this 8-year runway where every nation in CONCACAF has the opportunity to use it as a North Star. And I know already, talking to some of the federations, they're already tweaking their development programs and saying there's no, for instance, a prime example, no use us looking at our senior team right now. Let's look at our U13s, U15s, and let's start building there. So 2026 already changed the mentality of development within our region because they're using it as a North Star. So I think the opportunities are immense.
How many teams will qualify from CONCACAF?
Well, we get 6.5. Actually, we have an opportunity to get 8 because the way it works is the host get 2 half spots. So we get 2 teams that can go to the playoffs. So we have an opportunity to have 8 teams in the World Cup 2026, and really with our Nations League, with our development programs, our goal, our number one goal at CONCACAF, really is, and the challenge to our federations, and some of my federation presidents are here, is to have 8 teams at 2026.
That would be great.
World
That would
Cup.
be wonderful for CONCACAF. As I mentioned, the next panel is going to focus on club competitions. I want to thank you. I want to wish you luck going forward, onward and upward. He will be available, as I said, in the mixed zone out back right after to answer your questions and to take pictures. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.